This whole site, which is now called the New Museums site, was originally, in the Middle Ages, a monastery. It was an Augustinian monastery, right in the middle of town. And on the north side there was a series of monastic houses, a bathhouse, which is now a pub called the Bath House. And on the western side there was a stream running down into the Cam, which was basically an open sewer. That's now Free School Lane. When the university took over the monastery, it set up its first botanical garden here. And every early modern institution of learning, especially if it had medical students, had to have a botanic garden because those produced the herbs for medics. So this was where the university botanic garden was. And then in the early 19th century, the Botanic Garden, under its absolutely charismatic director, John Stephen Henslow, who was Charles Darwin's first patron, moved the Botanic Garden from its very constrained space here to the south of town, to the new town as it was called, and it's still there. And the space that was left was then developed by the university in its first major building program for the sciences, which were a series of museums. And that's important, I think, for us to remember that in the 19th century, the chief institutions of science were not labs, but museums. Even sciences we don't normally think of as being pursued in museums were museological sciences, like engineering. When engineering started to be taught in Cambridge, it was taught from a museum collection. There was a museum of mechanism. So you would have tables and tables and then shelves and shelves of model machines. Model steam engines, model cranes, model pile drivers, model gears and so on. And you learnt engineering at college by studying models of the machinery of the Industrial Revolution. And the first professors of mechanism, which is what they were called, taught from these museological collections. The same was true, obviously, of natural history and botany, of chemistry and so on. So the New Museums site speaks to the way in which this was the first scientific site in Cambridge. This is really all that's left of it, of that early to mid-19th century project, and it's now a series of examination halls. Everything else has been swept away. So that when the Cavendish was built at the end of the 1860s through the middle of the 1870s, it was built radically within a set of museums. Right? It was a big new lab which had to sort of interpolate itself in a model of university science which was essentially museological, which was essentially oriented around models. That was part of the challenge that the Cavendish had to overcome.